For most of us Dynasty fantasy football fans, the NFL draft is one of the best times of the year. I mean, we get to see where all of these new players come in, join teams, landing spots, all that kind of stuff. But there are certain Dynasty owners where there's players that we're nervous about, and there's guys that we're worried that they are going to lose their job to some rookie coming in and just taking all of the touches, all the receptions, all the whatever. Well, we're going to talk about that in the running back class this year. Now, if you're not aware, the running back class in the 2025 rookie class is a very, very strong one. In fact, I would argue it's probably the strongest, if not maybe even stronger than what we've seen all the way back to 2017. That was the class with Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, Aaron Jones, a lot of big names that ended up really changing the fantasy football landscape. So we're going to go into the players that I'm most worried about. Now, I'm going to give a little caveat. If your name is not Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, or Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm worried about you to some level. Now, obviously, there's a scale. There are some players that I'm way more worried about than others. And then there's other teams where you feel very strongly that a running back's going there, but it doesn't really affect much for fantasy football. What I want to focus in more on is kind of the in-between. The teams that do have guys that are interesting players, but aren't necessarily safe. Now, I will say that there are some big names that I'm concerned about. Not crazy concerned, but is there a world where the Indianapolis Colts add something? Yeah, that world exists, and it could be cumbersome for a Jonathan Taylor. Is there a world where Miami, with their extra fourth round pick, adds somebody to kind of complement Devon Achane? Yeah, that world does exist. Is James Cook completely safe just because they have Ty Johnson and Ray Davis there? Not necessarily, but those aren't necessarily the guys that I'm overly worried about. But we see surprises every year where we're like, we didn't see that guy going there. We didn't expect that person to be drafted into that spot. We didn't see this coming. So there are definitely names like that that I'm keeping an eye on. Like I said, if your name is not Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Saquon Barkley, I have a level of trepidation. And you're like, well, I have Derrick Henry or I have Joe Mixon, I'm fine. Well, probably to an extent, but could I see Baltimore drafting a running back for the future? Houston drafting a running back for the future? Yeah, but we'll stop giving what-if scenarios. Let's get to the 6 players that I want to focus on that I really do worry about them losing their job once the NFL draft hits. First player up, Tyrone Tracy. Now, if you were watching my videos last year, you're like, I have Tyrone Tracy, Garrett. You're saying he could be replaced now? Well, look, in rookie drafts, if you were drafting right after the NFL draft, he wasn't even on Sleeper's ADP. You were getting him in the 4th, 5th round. And now you can turn around and flip him. At one point, you could flip him for a first. Now you're probably looking at about an early second to mid-second to flip Tyrone Tracy. I think there is a very strong likelihood that the New York Giants do draft another running back. Will that phase out Tyrone Tracy completely? Not likely unless they draft a guy in the 1st round or super early in the 2nd. The New York Giants do have 2 picks in the 3rd round. So I could definitely see them going to that position there. Could we see maybe an Ollie Gordon, more of a between the tackles grinder, somebody like that, maybe take some carries away from Tyrone Tracy? I think that's absolutely in the realm of possibility. So Tyrone Tracy is one that I have my eye on to potentially lose some value after the NFL draft. Brian Robinson, he's another one that I am worried about in the NFL draft. Now, the Commanders don't necessarily have the extra draft capital that a lot of these other teams I'm going to talk about do. But the thing that worries me the most is they've done a good job at securing a lot of the weaknesses that this team had in the playmaker position, specifically at wide receiver. Bringing in a Deebo Samuel was a pretty big deal for this group, and I think he's going to help a lot. They re-signed Zach Ertz, so they're bringing him back. And yes, I think they're going to use a decent amount of draft capital on their defense, but Brian Robinson is just fine. I think there is a very strong likelihood that they fall in love with one of these running backs, maybe not right away in an early pick, but could be a 4th round pick. And with how good this class is, guys, I mean, there's 12 to 15 running backs that could be difference makers in the NFL. that means a third to a half of the league are going to be hurting. And I think the Washington Commanders are ones that are likely going to draft somebody, and that would spell bad news for a guy like Brian Robinson. The next one up is DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift, he's been in this position before. He was one of the main running backs for the Detroit Lions, and then all of a sudden, whoop, Jahmyr Gibbs is there. What's happening? Well, this is probably going to happen again to poor old DeAndre Swift. He's been with the team for 1 year, but now there's a new head coach, and he didn't have an amazing season with Chicago last year. This team has really done a great job of building up that offensive line. They have an extra second-round pick, and I think there's a very high likelihood that that pick could be a guy like an Omarion Hampton, a Travion Henderson, a Quinshon Judkins, probably more in the Judkins-Hampton range because they want probably a more physical back to go along with the DeAndre Swift. So, and I'm not ruling them out of a first-round selection potentially at 10, taking an Ashton Genty. We'll see how that goes, but I am not ruling them out from taking a player like that as well. So I think DeAndre Swift is somebody that we do have to be concerned about if he's a running back you're counting on your team. Next running back, and I'm going to say running backs here because it's not clear yet, but it's the Dallas running backs. Yes, I know they signed 2 running backs, both Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, to deals this offseason. Just because a team signed 2 running backs that have bigger name cachet does not preclude them from drafting a running back. And when you look at the money, neither one of these deals was for a lot of money, and they were 1-year deals. So they could easily get out from either contract or both contracts, and it would not hurt them financially very much at all. So as much, and look, I'm a big Javonte guy. I really liked him coming out as a rookie. I think he lost some juice after his injury in his second season. So that is an unfortunate thing for him. But I, even as a big fan of his, I would not be surprised at all to see a running back come in there and muddy this water and make neither of these players very valuable for fantasy football. Next team on my list that I'm really worried about, it's the Alvin Kamara owners. This guy is getting a little bit older, and you're like, well, you put the older guys that were super talented like Mixon and Henry in a different category. Why are you not doing this for Alvin Kamara? Well, the problem is this team has an extra third and an extra 4th round pick. Those are some key spots to go out and get themselves a running back. And you have Kellen Moore as the head coach. He just saw what a good running game does for an NFL team because he was just with Philadelphia, saw what that running game did there. Now, I don't think that they're going to necessarily be thinking they can get a Saquon Barkley unless they were to take a guy in the first round. They're in the nice spot. They could take an Ashton Genty. I don't think that's necessarily likely, though. And I do think they're going to build up this offensive line, but with the extra draft capital and an aging running back that they're going to have to start clearing at some point, clearing up money off their books, I think this is a great opportunity to snatch one of these running backs, and I think they'll use him this year, which will lower Alvin Kamara's value. Last team that has fantasy-relevant running backs that I am concerned about, it would be the Jacksonville Jaguar backfield. Yes, I'm worried about Travis Etienne. I'm worried about Tank Bigsby. This is another team with an extra third and an extra 4th round pick. When you have extra draft capital like that, it is much easier to splurge a little bit on some splashy positions like running back. This is also a new head coach, a new front office. These guys are not their guys. Etienne, Tank Bigsby are not their guys, and neither one performed very well last year. So it's a very real possibility that they could look at somebody and say, hey, I know that we have 2 running backs, but we love Cam Skattebo. We love Caleb Johnson. We love Devin Neal. We love LaQuint Allen. Fill in the blank, whoever it is. We have a player that we love in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round that we've got to make sure we get on our team. And that could really mess things up for that Jacksonville duo in the backfield there. So I would be a little nervous, have a little trepidation if those were my running backs. But who are the running back backfields that you are the most worried about? Go ahead and put that in the comments below. Like I said, I think every backfield should be on notice if your name is not Bijan Barkley or Gibbs, all of the others stand a very real chance of somebody being added to their running back room and messing up the juju of all of it. So let me know who you think that is in the comments below.